Hello, welcome everybody. We are live. Thank you very much for joining. Welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Patrick, and I will be talking to you about the English language, its past, its present, and its future. So welcome and thank you for joining us. We're not going to start just yet. We will just give a few minutes for some people to join, but I see we have a few people already. So welcome Le Canapé Rose and Sonia, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. Guys, it's great to see you. So please say hello. Say hello in the chat. It's great to see that there are people out there joining us. I know it's difficult to make it to all the webinars, but if you can come here on a Thursday evening, it's great to be here together. There is also the option of watching the webinars later. So don't forget to check out the YouTube channel to see some of the previous webinars that we did. Hello, Marilyn or Romano. Marilyn Romano, welcome. Welcome. So it's great to have a few different people here, some people that were here before and some people who are here for the first time. Good. Before we get started, maybe I can ask you a little question that you can add in the chat. I would like to know, what do you think is the best thing about learning or speaking English? What do you think is the best thing about learning or speaking English? I'm interested to hear what you say because I have an answer too, but I'd like to hear what you guys think. What do you think is the best thing about learning or speaking English? Okay, Le Canapé Rose says, probably for me who loves to travel, it is to be able to speak a language everywhere. Yes, I think that's a common answer. I think it's a very common answer. One of the great things about speaking English is that you can speak in almost everywhere that you go. You can find someone who can speak at least a little bit of English. So it's a great language to have for travel. Hello, Nicole. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So keep the answers coming. Okay, so Marilyn Romano said to arrive to speak fluid or to speak fluently. Yes, it's a really great achievement when you try to speak another language and you speak fluently. It feels really good. Okay, so yeah, I understand that answer. In the past, I have studied Spanish and French, and when you have success in another language, it feels very good. It's something you can be proud of. Hello, Emily. Thank you for joining us, Emily. So Emily, Nicole, everyone else, I just asked the question, what do you think is the best thing about learning or speaking English? But we also have the question, what do you think is the worst thing about learning or speaking English? Is there anything that you don't like about learning or speaking English? So yes, when I studied Spanish, I think the best thing was, like Marilyn Romano said, was to be able to go to a new place and have a successful conversation. It wasn't very fluent and there were lots of mistakes, but it felt very good to speak to other people and have a successful conversation. I think the worst thing about speaking, in my experience, speaking another language, which was Spanish, was arriving in a Spanish-speaking country and when people didn't understand me. That was frustrating. Okay. Welcome, Nicole and Stefan. Great. So Nicole said, to speak with a native speaker. Yes, that's a good thing. It feels really nice when you speak, similar to what Romano said. to speak to someone and have a successful conversation. So, Stefan, welcome. Of course, you can try to do your best to understand me. Let's see. If there's anything you don't understand, please just ask a question. Okay, so let's get the presentation for today. Okay. Okay, so Le Canapé Rose said, I speak 3 languages, so sometimes I'm confused if the other word I'm using is in English or French or the other. And sometimes I need the word in French, but only know it in other languages. Yes, that can be a problem too. So I know some people who speak a lot of languages very well, but sometimes they get confused and they think they're speaking English, but they're actually speaking Spanish or German. Okay, so yes, that's a good problem to have. So welcome everybody. We are going to get started on today's presentation. Just before we start, I would like to thank Anglify for making this possible. As most of you know, Anglify offer great one-to-one personal classes online, and you can find out more about them on their website or on the various social media channels. And I will tell you a little bit about myself. Okay, so actually today's presentation is about English, its past, its present, and its future. And we are going to look at a little bit of vocabulary, pronunciation, and grammar, and some history too. So my name is Patrick, and thank you very much for coming and joining the webinars. And I hope that you can join some of our future webinars too. Next week, we will be here again talking about Easter, so that's really exciting. So Stefan said that he speaks French, good. English, not bad. Okay, great. Your writing is good. And some German. Okay, good. So we're going to look at the origin and the evolution of English a little bit today. Fabienne says hello. Thank you for joining, Fabienne. Great to see lots of people joining. And don't forget to say hello. Okay, so now I have a question for you. Hello, L'Atelier. Welcome. It's great to see you again, regular at the webinars. So my question here is, what is the most widely spoken language in the world? So that means, what language has the most speakers of any language in the world? Welcome, Angelique. Thank you for joining. Does anybody have any idea what could be the most widely spoken language in the world? More people joining. Great to see you. Thank you for saying hello, MDO. So Sonia says Chinese. MDO agrees, Chinese. Fabian says Spanish. Okay. Angelique, Chinese. L'Atelier dans la Maison, Mandarin. Okay, good. David is not sure, Chinese or English. The Canapé Rose says Chinese, Mandarin. Emily, English. Marilyn Romano, English or American? Yes, so in North America, English is the most common language. So we don't really say an American language, but most people in North America speak English. Most people in South America speak Spanish or Portuguese. Of course, there are some French speakers also in North America. Okay, what is the most widely spoken language in the world? Okay, David now says English is the most widely because of India. Okay, that's a good point. It's an interesting question because the answer is English. English is the most widely spoken language in the world. So English is number 1. Mandarin Chinese is number 2. Where do you think French comes in the list of the most commonly or most widely spoken languages in the world? So English is number 1. Mandarin Chinese is number 2. Spanish is number 3. Okay, David says number 4. Sorry, Hindi is number 3. Hindi is number 3. Spanish is number 4. And French is number 5. Okay, so French is the 5th most spoken language in the world. English is first, and French is the 5th most spoken language in the world. Okay, so we have English, Mandarin Chinese, Hindi, Spanish, and French. Okay, so in total, there are about 310 million French speakers. But what about English? So David was correct. He said a lot of people that are maybe not from a traditional country that we associate with English, maybe they speak English. So how many people speak English as a first language? How many people speak English as a second language? Which one do you think is bigger? Which one has more people? People who speak English as a first language or as a second language? So remember, 310 million people speak French. Okay, 310 million people speak French. MDO says more people speak as a second, and Nicole agrees. Okay, you are absolutely correct. A lot more people speak it as a second language than as a first. Okay, so 380 million people speak it as a first. Okay, so I will write for you 380 million. 380 million people speak English as a first language, like me. And 1.1 billion people speak English as a second language, or a third or fourth, okay? So just like you guys, there are a lot of people whose first language is maybe French or Italian or Spanish, but English is their second language, okay? My next question, in how many countries is English an official language? And in how many countries is English the majority language? So that means the majority language means most of the population speak English on a daily basis. Okay, so most of the population speak English day to day. Which one do you think is bigger? Countries where English is an official language, or countries where English is the majority language? So we can see that there are about 80, in fact, 80 plus countries where English is an official language. But there are not many countries where English is the majority language. Do you guys want to try to mention any countries? Can you name any countries where English is the majority language? David says there are 20, maybe. Can we name any? Any countries where English is the majority language? So, okay, David starts with Australia. Yes. UK, Sonia, Ireland. Good. Thank you, Sonia. So we have 3. We have Australia, UK, and Ireland. Le Canapé Rose and David say the United States. Correct. L'Atelier dans la Maison says Canada. Absolutely correct. Of course, in Canada, there's a big population that also speak French, but English is the majority language. David says New Zealand. Absolutely correct. Le Canapé Rose says South Africa. A lot of people in South Africa speak English as their first language, but it's not the majority. Okay, so it's not more than 50%. South Africa is a country with a lot of official languages. There are actually 11 official languages in South Africa. So languages like Afrikaans, Zulu are widely spoken in South Africa as well. So English is not the majority language in South Africa, but it is a very commonly spoken language in South Africa. Okay, great guesses. There are not a lot of countries where English is the majority spoken language. So starting on the left of the map, we have Canada and the United States. We have Jamaica. Also, we have Trinidad and Tobago, small islands in the Caribbean. So we have Canada, USA, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and some other small Caribbean states too. Okay, so there are a few more. Then in Africa, we have Liberia. It's the only country in Africa where English is the majority language. There are other countries like South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, where English is widely spoken, but only Liberia is it the majority. In Europe, you have the UK and Ireland, okay? Malta, English is also widely spoken, but only the UK and Ireland are the only two countries where it is the majority language. Then we have Australia, and it's covered by my picture, but you also have New Zealand, as David mentioned, okay? So what we learned from this, first, we've learned English is much more commonly spoken as a second language than as a first language. And English is spoken in more countries as a language that's not the main language than the countries where it is the main language. So that's very interesting, and it's very relevant to all learners of English. Okay, we will see that a little bit more later. First, I want to let the history of English. Okay, so what is this language? We learned a little bit last week about the influence of French on English, but last week I had a good question from someone who attended the webinar who said, what was English like before the Normans, before the Norman French influence? So look at that a little bit. Okay, so first we have to say, what family of language is English in? So there are over 200 languages spoken in Europe, but in Europe there are 3 main language families, okay? So language families. Can anybody tell me, what do you think are the 3 main language families in Europe? Okay, so a few weeks ago, for St. Patrick's Day, I showed you a little bit of Gaeilge, or Irish, the native language of Ireland. And Gaeilge is a Celtic language. So it's in the Celtic language family, along with Breton from the north of France. So what are the 3 biggest language families in Europe? David says the Romance languages. Exactly, David. You have the Romance languages. L'Atelier dans la Maison says Latin, Cyrillic, and Saxon. Okay. Yes, in a way. The family, so Latin gives us the Romance languages. Okay. Latin, it gives us the Romance languages. Cyrillic is a script that belongs to the Slavic language families. And Saxon, well, Saxon, it's not a language. It's part of the Germanic language families, okay? So Emily said German, exactly. So we have the Romance languages, the Germanic languages, and the Slavic languages. So Romance languages include French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Romanian, and of course, Catalan and Corsican and Sicilian. These are all Romance languages. Languages include Russian, Ukrainian, Polish, Czech, Slovak, Croatian, Serbian. So these are Slavic languages. And Germanic languages includes German, Dutch, and English. Okay, so English is a Germanic language. As I mentioned, the Anglo-Saxons. So the Anglo-Saxons were a group of people who originated in the north of Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, and they traveled and arrived in England about, I think it was 1,500, 1,700 years ago. Okay, so about 1,500 years ago, the Anglo-Saxons arrived in England, the south of England, and they brought their language with them. So they moved from Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, and they traveled across the sea to England, and they brought their Anglo-Saxon language with them. So that's the origin or the basis of English. Oh. Good. So, but the Anglo-Saxons were not the last people to arrive. So people are always moving around, moving to different areas. And of course, everybody knows the Vikings came to the area. So the Vikings came about 200 or 300 years after the Anglo-Saxons, and they spoke a language called Old Norse. And so the Vikings came from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and they traveled to the region today that we know of as England, and they had a big impact on the English language. So cities in England, such as York, a beautiful city in England, was originally a Viking city. A lot of people think the Vikings came and they stole things, and that's true. The Vikings were raiders. But they were also settlers. So especially later, at first, they raided and stole a lot of things. It's true, but they also settled and built cities and towns, and they had a big impact on the language. After the Vikings came, oh, sorry guys. After the Vikings came the Norman French. Okay, so we saw last week in the webinar. If you didn't see it, have a look on the YouTube, Anglify YouTube channel. The Norman French arrived, and we saw that William the Conqueror declared that French was the language of the court, the language of the kings of England. So the Norman French had a huge impact. They really changed English. So before the Norman French arrived, we had Old English. When the French arrived, it changed to Middle English. Okay, so this period lasted about 400 or 500 years, from about the year 1100 or a little bit before until about the year about 1700. Okay, so this is the Middle English period. Okay, so if you want to know more about that, go and have a look at the previous webinar about English and French. So from about 1700, that's when we started with modern English. So we had early modern English from about the year 1700. So at this period, there were a huge variety of influences. So we saw Greek, Latin, French, more French, Spanish, all words from these different languages being introduced into English. We also had something called the Great Vowel Shift. So this was a change in the pronunciation. So for example, if you take the word house, this has been in English for a long time, but before the change in the vowel pronunciation, it was pronounced hoose, hoose. But from about the year 1700, there were changes in the pronunciation, and so we have the modern pronunciation, house. So the vowel sounds changed. So that's why there's a big difference sometimes between the pronunciation in English and French. And there was also a period of standardization. So England and Great Britain as a whole, there were lots of different varieties, but at this time it was standardized to be more like the London style of English. Okay. And then we had, oh yes, I forgot to mention that at the time, of course, we had the great English language writer, William Shakespeare. And Shakespeare is responsible for making a lot of words popular in the English language. So there are almost 2,000 words that historians can trace to Shakespeare. They entered the English language or they became popular as a result of the works of Shakespeare. So then we have the period of modern English. So this is the time of the British Empire really expanding, okay, getting bigger and bigger, and that has an influence on the language. And it's also the time of the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution in cities like London and Manchester, Birmingham, Glasgow, and there were more and more new things happening. So you had new things, new technology, so you needed new words, vocabulary. Okay, let's play a little game. So I'm going to give you a list of words, and I want you to identify the origins. I want you to tell me, do you think the word came from German, from Norse, the Vikings, from Irish, it's our representative of Celtic languages, or from Greek? Okay, so let's look at words. So we have the first word is whiskey, whiskey. Did whiskey come from German, Norse, Irish, or Greek? What do you think? Sonia says Irish, and David agrees. Absolutely, everybody knows that was an easy one to start. So the English word whiskey comes from the Irish word ishka, ishka, which means water. So whiskey came from the Irish language into English. The next word is knife, knife. Do you think it came from German, Norse, Irish, or Greek? Fabian says German. David agrees German. A lot of people saying German. Think about it. Knife. So, who were the scary guys that came and stole a lot of things? They carried knives. Catherine is right. It's Norse. It's Norse, exactly. Okay. So knife was originally a Norse word. It was used by the Vikings. Okay, knife. The next word is marathon. Marathon. Do you think it came from German, Norse, Irish, or Greek? Nicole and Sonia say Greek. Absolutely correct. Marathon, of course, it's Greek. Yes, easy one. The next one is interesting. Thursday. A lot of people get confused between Tuesday and Thursday. Okay, jeudi, Thursday. But where did the word Thursday come from? Was it German, Norse, Irish, or Greek? David says Norse. Nicole says German. Has anybody ever seen the movie Thor? So Thor Fabian says Irish. No. Thor was a Norse god. And on the fourth day of the week, the Norse people, the Vikings, worshipped Thor. Thor was the most important god for this day. So they called this day Thor's Day. Okay, so just like the superhero, Thor, you had Thor's Day. So today in English, we say Thursday because of the Vikings, the Norse, okay? So Thursday, David is correct, was a Norse word. Okay, good. Next, we have the word anger. Anger. What do you think? German, Norse, Irish, or Greek? Who were the bad guys? The Irish? The Germans? No. No, not the Irish or the Germans. So remember the raiders, the people who came to steal everything, and maybe they also demonstrated anger. It was the Vikings, okay? Anger was a Norse word. Norse word. Next, we have the word slogan. Slogan, this is difficult, but slogan actually comes from Irish. It's from an Irish expression. And before the Irish or the Celtic people went into battle, each family had their own cry, their own shout. So they would shout something before the battle, and they called it their slogan. Today, we associate slogans with companies. So for example, Nike, just do it. It's a slogan, okay? I don't know any other slogans, but there are lots of slogans that we associate with marketing, with promotion. But the original comes from the Irish because they would shout this before going into battle. Okay, our next word is kitsch. Where do you think the word kitsch comes from? Kitsch. Tesco, every little helps. It's a slogan, exactly. David is correct again. Kitsch, it's a German word. And kitsch in German means trash or rubbish. So kitsch in English means something that is very plastic. It's a kind of style that doesn't look very sophisticated. We say that's kitsch. So it's a German word that we use in English. Okay, next we have dinosaur. So dinosaur, is it German, Norse, Irish, or Greek? David is right again. Dinosaur is Greek. Okay, so you will see a lot of those scientific or very technical words. The English often use Greek words for those. So Fabian is correct as well. Dinosaur is Greek. Noodle. Noodle. If anybody has ever visited Germany, you might see in the restaurants and shops noodle. Okay, noodle. So this has given us the English word noodle. It's strange because we don't associate noodles with German food, but that's where the word came from. Next, we have an interesting one, hooligan. So hooligan, no, it's not Norse. It looks like it could be because we had anger and knife as Norse. But in fact, hooligan comes from a family name. And the family is O'Hulicon. Yes, so Fabian is correct. O'Hulicon is a family name. If you travel to Ireland, you might meet a lot of people called Houlihan or O'Hulicon. And this comes from the Irish in New York and in Boston, there was a family, an Irish family called O'Hulican. And the O'Hulicans were really troublemakers. They broke things, they caused a lot of problems, and the police said, "Oh, the O'Hulicans. It's always those O'Hulicans." And that became the English word hooligan. Okay, so a hooligan, a troublemaker, someone who causes problems, breaks things in the streets. It comes from the Irish in New York and one family, the O'Hulicans. Okay, Norse was for noodle. No, yeah, Norse, no. Sorry, noodle, it's a German word, German word. Okay, hamburger, where does that come from? That's easy. Hamburger. Think of a city, think of a town. Fabian's correct, it's German. Of course, the wonderful city of Hamburg in Germany. So hamburger comes from Hamburg. And lastly, we have the word democracy. Yeah, I'll tell you, Hamburg. So lastly, we have the word democracy. Sonia is correct. It's Greek. So a lot of those big concepts, those big ideas, they will be from Greek. Great. Okay. I have it's a little bit shorter. Okay, we have 3 groups. Can you identify the origins of these words? Do they originate with William Shakespeare, the Industrial Revolution, or the colonies of the British Empire? Okay, because this was another that had a big impact on English. So we have the word train. Train. Is it from Shakespeare, the Industrial Revolution, or the British Empire? So train. David's correct. It has to be the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution brought a lot of new technology. Okay, Emily agrees, yes. It was some new technology, so they needed new words, new vocabulary. The word gossip, does it come from Shakespeare, the British Empire, or the Industrial Revolution? Gossip. So, talking about people. What? Okay, so gossip. British Empire? No, not the Empire. Fabian thought the British Empire too. Nicole is correct. It's from Shakespeare. Because in a play, in a story, gossip is important. And you have drama. So gossip originated in Shakespeare. Okay, the next word, pajamas. Pajamas. Where do you think it came from? The Industrial Revolution, Shakespeare, or the British Empire? Any ideas? Pajamas. Emily thinks Shakespeare again. Yeah, it's a good guess. It's not correct because you could say sometimes Shakespeare, you have people going to bed and some love stories, but no, not from Shakespeare. Nicole says the British Empire. Exactly. It's from the British Empire. So pajamas was originally a word used in India for the style of clothes that people wore with silk. Okay, pajamas. And now we use it for clothes for bed. So yes, Sonia is correct, the British Empire. Next, we have the word jungle. Jungle. Do you think it's from Shakespeare, the British Empire, or the Industrial Revolution? David says the British Empire. Yes, of course. There is no jungle in Britain, but when people traveled to India, to Sri Lanka, to Southeast Asia, they encountered a lot of jungle. Okay, they asked the people, what are these forests? And the Indian people told them, jangle. So in English, we say jungle. Okay. Factory. Factory, where do you think it comes from? The Empire? Shakespeare? No, the Industrial Revolution, of course. Factory, it's from the Industrial Revolution. Yes, yes. And next we have trek. Trek. Does it come from the Industrial Revolution, Shakespeare, or from the British Empire? L'Atelier says from the Empire. Absolutely correct. Yes, David agrees. So this is a word that was originally used in South Africa and different parts of Africa for a long walk across the desert. Okay, trek. So today, trek, a long walk somewhere outside in a natural place, was originally used in Africa, and the British found the word there. Next, we have the word lonely. Lonely. Do you think it was from the Industrial Revolution, Shakespeare, or the British Empire? Nicole says Shakespeare. Yes, yes, everybody agrees, and you're correct. Shakespeare created the word lonely. Yes. Next, we have electricity. Where do you think this came from? Electricity. Of course, it's from the Industrial Revolution. Yes. And next, manager. Manager. Of course, it's from the Industrial Revolution too. Yes, correct, Sonia. So electricity, manager, train, factory, these are all from the Industrial Revolution. What about buddy? Do you think buddy came from the British Empire or from Shakespeare? David says the British Empire. Correct. It's again from India. Yeah, so a few people thought maybe Shakespeare. No, buddy, it's a word that originated in India, and it means a friend. So when the English colonizers went to India, the local people said, "This is my buddy." Okay, so my friend. Okay, great. That's a little bit about some of the different words. Okay. Okay, that's the history of English. Okay. And now we are going to look at English today. Okay. English today. So what is the situation with English? So English has the largest vocabulary of any language. Thank you, Nicole. You said it was interesting. Thank you very much. So English has the largest vocabulary of any language. French actually has the second largest vocabulary, and English has the largest. So most average people who speak English as their primary language know about 20 to 35,000 words. Okay. And in fact, English is one of the fastest growing languages. So one of the reasons that English is has the largest vocabulary is because it takes in words from other languages very rapidly. And so the main dictionaries, the Oxford English Dictionary and the Cambridge English Dictionary, add about 800 words per year to their dictionaries. So there are 800 new words every year. So English really has a great, huge vocabulary. Okay. Because of this huge vocabulary, people are learning English every day. There are new words all the time. So sometimes you think, oh, I need to learn new words. Well, native speakers, people like me, we learn new words as well. So remember that the best way to learn new words is to read and to listen. I always say to my students, reading is one of the best things you can do because you will encounter new words and it will maybe make you curious about new words. So when I'm reading the newspaper or a novel, a magazine, I often come across a new word or a new expression. And sometimes I even look it up in the dictionary or check with other people. Have you ever heard this word? So it's just the same for people learning the language. You will always learn new words. Another thing about English, and it's the same in a lot of languages, is that one word can have many different meanings. But in English, there are some words that have hundreds of different meanings or different uses. So think about verbs like go and set. They have a lot of different applications, different uses with slight differences in the meaning. Let's look at some vocabulary, and we'll look at the word run. Okay, we have the expression to go for a run, okay, like the girl in the picture, go for a run. But when you turn your car engine on and you leave it on, your engine is running, okay? A machine is running when it is in use. To run for election, okay, so you can see that maybe someone, like maybe for the next presidential elections in France, maybe Zinedine Zidane will run for election to be the new president. Who knows? In the US, they voted for a celebrity, so anybody can run for election. To run a business, okay? So to run a business means to manage a business. So to run a business. The course runs from June to September. So this means the course will be on from June to September. The course runs. Tears were running down his face. So we use run or running with water or liquid. Okay, so when you're crying, the tears run down your face, or you can say the tap is running. Then we have a lot of phrasal verbs. So if you're driving and your car suddenly stops, maybe you ran out of petrol. I ran out of petrol. It's a phrasal verb. Means my petrol is down to 0. It's empty. And then we have some little compound expressions. In the run-up to Christmas. In the run-up to Christmas, the shops are very busy. So in the run-up means the period of time just before an event. In the run-up to the Olympics in Paris, people were very excited. So you can see a lot of different meanings, just one word, run. So when we think about English, some people think about England, but we saw that English is a global language, and it's not just for English people. In fact, there are a lot more people who speak English outside of England than in England. So let's look at some of the main varieties of English. So remember, we saw countries like Canada, the United States, Ireland, the UK, which has Scotland and Wales and England, Australia, New Zealand. We saw that they all speak English as the majority language. And sometimes people say, I want to learn American English, or I want to learn British English. But in fact, there are a lot of different varieties of English, even inside America, inside Britain. So there's a variety of English in London and a different one in Manchester or Newcastle or Glasgow or Cardiff. The same, sometimes there are some words that are used in New York that people don't know in California. So let's look at some vocabulary from some of the different varieties of English. So the first word is we. We. And we means small or little. But in Scotland, people use we for a lot of different things. So we, it's part of Scottish English. So when you go to Scotland, you will hear people saying, there's a nice wee shop on that wee street. So we just means small or little, and or cute. So it's a little bit like in Spanish when you add ito or ita. In Scotland, they put we before everything, meaning small or little. Has anybody heard we before? The next word is y'all. Where do you think y'all comes from? So my good friend, she often says, "What are y'all doing at the weekend?" Where do you think people usually say y'all? Any ideas? Exactly, it means you all, l'atelier. You are correct, you all. And Nicole says maybe it's Irish. No, it's not Irish. So one of the strange things about English is there is no plural you. In French, you have tu and you have vous. But in English, we just have you singular and you plural without any distinction. But in the United States, especially the southern United States, they use y'all to mean the group of you. It's like a you plural. So what are y'all doing means what are all of you people doing? Okay. I hope you all understand. The next expression is sweet as bro. Okay. Sweet as bro. And sweet as bro just means everything's great. So if you see some people and you say, "How are you?" They might say, "Sweet as bro." Or if you say, "I'm going to make you dinner," they might say, "Sweet as bro." It means, "Oh, good, great, great news." And this is in New Zealand. So if you go to New Zealand, you have to say, "Sweet as bro." Okay. Next word is Bampi. Bampi is not a common word, but sometimes if you go to Wales, you will hear people say Bampi for their grandfather. Okay. The next one is Egypt. So Egypt is not a very nice word. It's kind of like idiot or a really stupid person. So we say, for example, you might say, "Did you see the news about Donald Trump? Oh no, he's such an idiot. That guy's an idiot." Okay. So a really stupid person, a person that you don't like, he's an idiot. Does anybody have any idea where you might hear someone say, "That guy's an idiot"? I can say this very naturally because that's in Irish English. In Ireland, we often say, "He's an idiot." Next is a modal verb, shall. So a lot of people, almost everyone, shall. Shall is mostly used in England. So they say things like, "Shall we go and get a cup of tea? Shall I make the coffee? Shall I park here?" So it's usually used with I or we, but it's very English style. In Ireland, I would just use will. In Canada, in America, most people just use will. Will I make some tea? Will we get some coffee? Will I park here? Shall, it's particularly common in England. Okay, the next word is avo. So avo comes from Australia, and in Australia, they often abbreviate or shorten words. So an Australian person might say, "Oh, I'm going to the shops. I need to buy an avo." What do you think an avo means? They might say, "I think I'll just have some toast with some avo." What do you think an avo is? So remember, it's a shortened or abbreviated word. L'atelier is correct. In Australia, they call avocados avos. They call cigarettes ciggies. So there are a lot of words that are shortened in Australian English. Okay, and the last word we have is toque. Has anybody heard the word toque before? So toque is originally a French word, but it's used in Canadian English. So toque is originally a French word. Okay, you have never heard it. I think it's a very old French word. But in Canadian English, so if you go to Toronto, if you go to Vancouver or Halifax, people will say, it's very cold outside. You should wear your toque. So a toque, it's a woolly hat or a warm hat. So in Ireland, we just say hat. Okay. You can say woolly hat. Okay, toque pour les avocats. Okay. So yes, it's very old-fashioned in French, but in Canadian English, they use toque all the time. Okay. So it's a warm for the winter. Okay, great. Ah, like the cook's hat. Okay, yes, yes. Okay, so why is English so widely spoken? So we talked about this a little bit already. We saw the British Empire, but in the last century, there is another empire of sorts. It's the American Empire. So the United States has a lot of power around the globe, soft power, hard power. The UK too. So the empire, in a way, continues. That's one reason. Another reason is pop culture. Okay, so if you think a lot of people know about Elvis Presley and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and things like that, they know about writers like Jane Austen or Charles Dickens, different versions in their own languages. And so this has an influence on spreading English around the world. Movies, okay, more modern movies. Um, the biggest movie industry or one of the biggest movies industries in the world is in Hollywood, things like that. So that continues the spread of English. And of course, the internet. Most of the internet is in English. So English is the dominant language of the internet and business today. Mm. Earlier in the presentation, we saw that that English is more commonly spoken as a second language, and it's the language of English is not connected with one particular country. If you want to learn Japanese, the Japanese language, you probably have to learn a little bit about Japanese culture, maybe about Japanese food, about the history, about samurai, about different things. If you want to learn Irish, the native language of Ireland, you probably need to learn about Irish music and Irish sport, Irish history to help you to understand the language. But English is a global language. So you don't need to learn about the English royal family or how to drink your tea to learn English. So that's one of the things about English. It's not associated completely with one particular area. So that's one of the things we need to remember when we're studying English. Today, English is a global language. So sometimes native speakers use a lot of phrasal verbs or a lot of idioms, and it's quite confusing for learners. But don't worry, there are 1 billion people who speak English as a second language. So you don't need to focus so much on some of those things that maybe confuse you in the language, but build up your basics, and there will be lots of people that you can easily converse with and communicate with, and the native speakers will understand you too. So what is the future of English? We're nearly finished, but I want to ask you, well, first I will say that one thing that when a language changes, usually it's something difficult that maybe is erased or removed from the language. So I want to ask you, what are the most difficult things in English? Does anybody have any ideas? So when you're learning English, what are some things that make you go, oh, that's difficult? That's really confusing. So there are three things I was thinking of that students often make mistakes with. Catherine says phrasal verbs. Yes, phrasal verbs are really difficult. Catherine, I don't think phrasal verbs will disappear. I think there will be a lot of phrasal verbs even in the future. A lot of people are saying pronunciation. Yes, pronunciation is difficult. What particular area of pronunciation? Is there one particular sound? So one that I have noticed causes a lot of problems with pronunciation is the th or th. So what we sometimes call the th sounds. So in words like brother, brother, that okay, though or although, that okay. So some people speculate that in the future, maybe this sound will disappear. And in some pronunciations, people don't say brother, they say brother, brother, brother. And some people say brother, brother. Okay. Some people don't say though, they say do or fo. So maybe this will change, but it will take a long time. But some experts are saying they can see this changing. Sometimes the letters have no link with the sounds. Yes, that's confusing too. Yeah, pronunciation is difficult. What about in grammar? So if we take a verb, we saw last week, I eat, you eat, he eats, she eats, it eats, we eat, they eat. So the only one that changes is the third person singular. A lot of my students, they forget the S. So some people say, maybe in the future, there will be no S. So we will say, I eat, you eat, he eat, she eat. Could be a solution. So maybe this will change. And maybe another thing that could change is uncountable nouns. So for example, the noun information is uncountable. So you cannot say informations, okay? So in current standard English, we don't ever add S because it's an uncountable noun. But maybe with time, this will change and people will say, yes, you can say informations. Okay, so Letellier likes this idea that the things will get a little bit easier by removing some of the things that cause the biggest difficulties. So third person S sound and uncountable nouns might change in the future. We will see. Okay, it's just some speculation. So that's the end of the webinar. If you have any questions or any comments, please, now is the chance to ask. I would be very happy to hear from you. Also, remember that you can leave a comment under the video if you want. It's always really nice. And also, next week, there will be another webinar about Easter. That's next week at the same time, Thursday at 8 o'clock. Easter Uncovered, History, Origins, and Traditions. So it's going to be a special event to prepare for the Easter holidays. So don't forget about that. But for the moment, if you have any questions, anything you want to know about the English language, I will try my best to answer, or anything you want to say or add, please take the opportunity. I don't think I have anything else to say. Good. So if, oh yes, Natalia says, yeah, she'll be there next week. Great. Yeah, it's a good idea to find a book about the origin of English words. You can even buy an etymology dictionary. I really have fun reading those, but there are lots of interesting books on the topic too. Yes, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Thank you for your comments. And thank you for coming next week. I think that will be fun. We'll learn all about Easter. Anybody else? So don't worry if you've got any little comment or question. I will give you a few minutes to answer. If not, say goodbye, good night. Thank you for coming. And I hope to see you again next week at the next webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much. Nicole, I would be very happy to see you next week. Thank you, Latelier. See you next week. Great. Good. Emily, thank you very much. I'm glad that you found it interesting. Catherine, thank you for coming. Fabienne, too. Thanks, Sonia. Bye-bye. Bye-bye to everybody. Great evening. Thank you, guys. Okay, I will stop there. And remember, same time next week. Good night.